Welcome to On Location, episode 4. My name's Reno, I'm your host. Today I'll be guiding you through what was a feedback session after showing the film This Way of Thinking, edit 2. So we made some revisions after the last time we talked about this. I think it was episode 2 of this podcast where we shared an LA feedback session. So we made some changes, and I'll be guiding you through the feedback session that was recorded from the various different people that were there. So let's jump into it. And for those of you on the video version, the first 3 minutes or so are all verbal, and then the video starts. It took us a second to get in position. All right, here we go.
So who's the audience? There was 2 goals. The first was, I'm going to kind of wander whoever's I'm talking to so I can try to capture some stuff. Maybe let's do this. If anyone's like, yo, I don't want to share this later, potentially just catch me on the side later and tell me, and then it just never gets shared. Catch me outside.
One more of these, I got this.
So, I don't know, like we were talking about this today on how what we've been chasing is the essence of Pat and his words and what he has to say and what's going on at Boys Town. So for that, the primary goal was we captured a lot of shit that has to do with behavior analysis, including technical jargon and things going on in the field. And it was like, we need to cut all of that out. So I've been relying on Jarek here to filter through like what stuff that you don't understand. And what I'd like to get feedback also from y'all is there anything there that seems like it's confusing because it might not, make sense to the general population? Now, saying the general population, that's like way too widespread. So really it's the helping professions, which is why we kind of reached out to different folks here that are in different walks of either behavior analysis, speech, occupational therapy, clinical, social, school psych sort of roles, even the Catholic Church, right? So I know it's still wide, but the helping professions and the Catholic Church, I think. I don't know if Jarek or Sarah would say something different, but we're still 2 months until like premiere date, so we're sorting this out.
No, just watching from like a behavior analytic point, saying activative care, I could see that being a responsive out of a behavior analytic group, but everybody else would, that makes sense. Like how that stuff gets broken down, because he speaks very generally, but from behavior analytic view and our overly anal approach to things, some of those terms may also kick back of how are you going to operationally define or behaviorally define some of that stuff. So that's why I was interested in the audience and like social worker. I mean, those guys are on, love that, but
sometimes I feel like
overly angry.
Sometimes, yeah, I agree. Sometimes I feel like behavior analysts are the hardest ones to convince. So if we can convince people outside of that, then cool. Yeah. Solid question, man. It's my answer.
That's fair.
What's up, man?
It was alluded to a lot, but is the Boys Town a faith-based sort of community?
Yes.
And does that raise conflicts within sort of the other side of the field?
Go for it.
Flesh that out a little more, what you're asking. So the other side of meaning that most behavior analysts are atheists?
Well, no. Are they?
I think so. I think a vast majority of people within
if you're a staunch
our discipline would consider themselves, just because it would just be very challenging to reconcile faith and science. And so but I think it's so interesting because Pat, I think, does this tremendous job, and we talked about this in the podcast that we filmed earlier today, of making using religious metaphors to make secular points.
Sure. And
trust me, John Fox, he's hilarious. He's a great guy. He manages $100 million of assets for UBS out of Omaha. He just has this tremendous story as this 2.5-year resident of Boys Town.
So I hope you start to realize that this isn't just about Pat Fryman, the great speaker, and all these things that we've talked about in past episodes. While he is a key character, there are other characters in this. One of them is John, and John was a resident of Boys Town in the past.
And so we tried to, I think, strike a balance between honoring the fact that this fundamentally is an institution that has been really supported by Catholicism. Father Flanagan is a Catholic priest. The president of Boys Town is Father Bose, who is also a Catholic priest. And so that's the lineage. Omaha is a very Catholic town. And I don't even know if you guys noticed with Peter, he was wearing a shirt with a bulldog for Gonzaga University. So that's my alma mater. I went there for undergrad, and it's a Jesuit school. So part of this is just, I think, a product of the environment of Omaha, Nebraska. It's very Catholic. But I mean, are we worried about, kind of potentially alienating other audience? I think we just tried to bring a balanced perspective and an honest perspective of but this is what it is. And I think Pat does, again, like a very, good job of walking that line and not necessarily disclosing, is he a Catholic, is he a believer or not? Like, you don't necessarily know. But I think fundamentally what we're saying is a lot of the values that are espoused at Boys Town are human values and values of care. And I think that resonates with everybody.
Gotcha.
If anything, I can convince like behavior analysts to show up and like watch this thing. So it was more so like, what can we do to maybe make it appealing to others first, and like then secondary these folks that may be looking at it differently. You got something? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had sort of a question. So with such a broad like audience and target group that you're looking for, I'm not sure like who all is invited to your premiere, but what is the actual message you're trying to convey to such a wide group of people? Like the ending scene seemed more about like kindness and just like being good people and kind of acknowledging like the helping professions, but I wasn't really sure what like the overall message was, because there was a lot of really great information about Boys Town, but then it concluded with like, hey, let's be good people, let's recognize all the people in the helping profession. So I was just a little unclear as to like what the ultimate message was for this.
I think that's something we're trying to convey still. I would say that's, and I'd ask Jarek potentially to look at this, like, I think that's the goal we're looking for, is like, there's a different way to view the world, and multiple different professions are looking at it differently and helping try to make the world a better place.
Okay.
It was like super good feedback, because I don't know what we're missing that maybe closes that gap for you.
So
So this is a gap that I think we basically ran into in LA as well. Yeah. And between LA and Reno, we added a bunch of different supplemental shots and things like that. But we're still missing it, which is super, super useful feedback.
So maybe, I don't know like how many different interviews you did, but maybe like delving into some of the different helping professions that work at that facility to just kind of show what contributions they all make.
Yeah,
because it was also
the audience that Pat is talking in front of are the psych interns at Boys Town.
Okay.
So Boys Town has a very well formed internship program. It's actually tremendous. And I noticed you cut this out on version 25.1. There's actually this whole hallway in the behavioral health center that has all of the pictures of Pat with all of his psych interns over the last, 20 odd years. And the running joke that I said to him was like, Pat, look at how you've grown this program. And these pictures used to be in front of this, older house. Now it's in front of this magnificent building. But there's one consistent piece through all of this, and that would be your hairdo. Because his hair has not significantly changed in
At all.
At all in the last 20 years. Like, he's like doubled down on the shag.
He sent me a picture I haven't shared with you yet of his like 1980s porn stash. Sorry, I got more to that later.
And so the behavioral health center at Boys Town specifically is really focused on a lot of fee-for-service counseling service, but it's primarily psychologists. Some of these psychologists also may or may not become behavior analysts, but this is a psych intern program, so it's not a behavior analytic intern program. And Pat himself is not a board-certified behavior analyst. He is a psychologist.
Okay.
He's a psychologist. He's a psychologist, but he 100% views the world from behavior analysis.
Of course.
There is a dedicated building to speech and language pathology there.
I saw the shot.
Yeah. But there's and I'm unclear the role of OT there. When we go back in March, we're going to figure this out. So this feedback session also leads to us potentially picking up additional shots later to help fill these sort of things in. So
because we've done 2 different trips there, and then we're going again in 3 weeks. Part of this also is to show this to Peter's mom for the first time. And hopefully to Peter, he might be in Europe because he's like a cool senior in high school and like doing cool things.
Peter's mom and John have no clue what
they have no idea
we're turning this into.
On the note of Peter, I think it would have been nice to give him maybe like a little introduction, because I think the video talked a lot about how Pat was going to have Fox, I think it was. Like, he was going to use him as, like, the examples for everything, but there seemed to be a lot more focus on Peter. So maybe a little introduction to, like, who he is and, like, why he was there.
And I wonder...
Last thing we heard in LA as well. It's cool.
And this kind of organically developed. I mean, we didn't realize when we were filming Peter, he wasn't part of our original schedule. This is something Pat was like, hey, I've been working with this kid. He's really cool, and I think he come on camera, his mom's gonna give him, because he's a minor, so I'm pretty sure that his mom's gonna say, okay to this. We're like, okay. And Peter, I mean, I think it comes across in the video, but to be in the room with that kid, he's just such a special person. Just like, Jesus Christ, he's so neat. And so, yeah, I think we didn't realize until, Ryan and Jarek started editing that really, this becomes this piece that's like interwoven throughout the whole story.
So again, here you'll notice that Peter is another key character in this documentary piece.
Yeah, just to kind of like wrap it up. And I think part of what you notice in this documentary is we don't have narrative audio on top of anything. And so so that could be something that we could add to perhaps guide the audience or guide the viewer better to understand, like, why are we having John Fox or who's Peter, that he's a client that Pat's worked with, because we wanted to have both the opportunity to hear Pat deliver something because he's such a powerful speaker and he's written within the field of behavior analysis so many articles on the kind of front of the room training. And so there's, to me, nothing more salient than like watching someone in action. But we can, perhaps make it more clear that Peter's one of his clients. And so we also wanted to allow people to come in contact with how does Pat work with, adolescents? What are they doing? What's the type of work they do at Boys Town? Because the Boys Town Behavioral Center has seen more than 5,000 clients and families in the last 10 years, which is great. They're voted routinely the best counseling services in Omaha. I mean, they've made a really tremendous impact on the community.
There's also 11 or 12 different sites outside of Omaha as well. So that's something that we're hoping to pick up right after in the credits of like, hey, there's these resources, these things out there for people that are maybe experiencing loss or issues themselves, but also there's a number of sites out there. So they're trying to additionally replicate what it is that they're doing there in other locations.
And also what we're hoping is this film is really a call to action for people to donate to Boys Town, because if you hear what Pat's saying, there really has been a problem in terms of getting states to fund the work that they're doing, because the whole idea of like residential care has really fallen out of favor because of how people typically perceive it. But Boys Town is atypical. And the family teaching model, again, is born out of behavior analysis. It's one of the most effective treatment methodologies for trauma, for trauma-based care. And so we really are hoping that this is an audience that we want to have a premiere at Boys Town. And that's part of what we'll talk to Pat and his team about when we go out there in 3 weeks. As this is a mechanism for fundraising and just really to raise awareness, because there hasn't been a piece done on Boys Town that's been broadly disseminated for many, many years. I mean, when Spencer Tracy won an Oscar for Boys Town, like, our grandparents were barely alive. So it's been
years.
Yeah. And also, I think, honestly, just to show how effective they've been able to be for over 100 years. Over 100 years is tremendous. But I think that we can add some more context to make it more clear to the viewer. In terms of why are we including these people? Who are they? And then what is like our kind of like, why should you give a shit kind of thing?
So we have the video, the audio of what they're saying. We have the narration that we have not even added whatsoever that we can potentially do. And then any other textual context we want to provide it there as well. Yeah. One thing I realized is we need to lengthen maybe a little bit of some things. I don't know if you caught it or not at the beginning, but we flashed the title and I was looking at you and you're looking down for that like 3 seconds and that ruined us from your perspective. Okay. Yeah. So anyhow, there's a lot of good feedback that's coming in so far from just watching all. Yeah.
I've got something. So piggybacking on the family teaching model, as a clinician that's not well versed in those type of models, I think it would be super helpful to have a quick synopsis of what that entails, because it was mentioned several times. And I have a very small psychology background, but it would be nice to have a little bit more of an elaboration. And here's the model, here's what it looks like, here's why it's impactful.
I agree with that.
Totally justified.
I think it's something we picked up along the way. Like, oh, there's a mom and dad and they could have 3 kids. Okay. They have 8 to other 10 kids.
Also,
but
what's the research on this? What are the positive outcomes? What does this model look like?
Yeah.
A little bit more detail regarding what does this actually entail and why is this so important?
It's not clear, I guess, to us either how that follows like the ABA, like the behavior analysis.
Yeah, I mean, the family
Like, we
teaching
have
model
no-
is rooted in behavior analytic. Montrose Wolf was the primary author of the initial studies, and he was the first person that went to Boys Town.
But we don't get that.
Yeah, no, that's super good.
And I think part of it is also, I think for us, it's kind of like this balance of, because we want this to be an outward-facing piece, how deep into the technical piece do we want to get? And that's also why there's a whole separate component of this for continuing education content. And Pat and I do a very deep dive into articles, research, and I'm trying to figure out, like, do we put that piece more there? Because we talk more about the family teaching model and the efficacy around it, and it's cost effective, and what are the, it's behavior analytic. Mm-hmm. There's a whole family teaching model association. They have a conference. I mean, and Boys Town is not the only place where this model is used. But it's basically the whole idea of, like, if you really want to affect change, you need to have intervention 24/7. There's nothing that's going to be more effective than doing something in the home. And also that fundamentally, like, safe kind of nuclear, Norman Rockwell, experience is transformative. And that's really what the research has showed.
So yeah, one thing she mentioned that I didn't make clear up front, partially purposely, I don't know if I should do this more up front though, in retrospect, is that we recorded about 8 hours of content. We condensed it into about this hour, trying to make something that was more useful for, or I guess relatable to the helping professions. But on the back end, there's roughly 6 hours of things that are more in the nitty gritty details of what's going on. Mm-hmm. And realistically, it's probably only an hour and a half to 3 hours of that, maybe max 50%, I guess what I'm getting at is relatable to people that are outside of behavior analysis. The other is specific to behavior analysis. But this is something we have to figure out and sort out 100%. So this is extremely useful. Thank you.
So again,
Of course,
don't
the
say
speech
sorry.
nerds. And what about this?
So if you're making it relatable to the helping professions, and if you're maybe going in the direction of, like, raising funding for Boys Town, along with the undervalued means, like, underpaid. So I don't know how helpful the helping professions are going to be able to, like, actually do that fundraising for, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I see that.
We're not the biggest donor group other than our skill set.
For sure. I that's a great point. I guess the thought right now was, can I hook those people in and can we make a shareability on the story through them?
So we definitely, like, have
but,
that goal.
Like, really, the idea, what you're saying there is super accurate. Like, the goal is resonate with the people that need to donate, if that's your goal, versus resonate with the people that you want to resonate with, if you want to make them feel included.
We can certainly, you'll pull on the heartstrings of every helping profession, and we can disseminate like crazy.
Yeah.
But we're not going to be like your target
donors.
Right, and that's also why we kept it as the least jargony as possible, because for example, Boys Town, their board of directors is stacked with, billionaires and people with incredible financial reach and influence. And I what I'm very interested in is for us to go, back to Omaha in a couple weeks and, share this to John and share this to Pat, who regularly interacts with the board, and really kind of say, like, do you think this is going to be a piece that's going to resonate with this board? Can we schedule this premiere at Boys Town for, that fund, more of that fundraising audience? So we'll see. But I understand, your point, like, hey, we love it, but we're not writing you a check for $25,000 for Boys Town. Yeah. You're like, but I'll give you lots of hugs and reinforcement.
Right. All day.
Yeah.
So I'll be the first to tell you that we definitely canceled that trip. Due to the global pandemic and what's going on, we decided it was best to stay put. This was planned for prior to lockdowns and things like that, but it just didn't feel right. And so now what we're doing is we're actually finalizing this week, while you're listening to this, a on location, Boys Town, virtual viewing for Peter, John, Peter's family, as well as Pat to review, give us some feedback on, and just see how things are going to go. So what we're talking about here of being able to go out and do the showing, this was prior to all this being announced. So just know there's a really big dog ear asterisk. We're coming back to this later.
I think it's clear that we need to figure out that front end still, yeah. That front end's been consistent.
All my notes
those
were
first
about
couple
transitions.
Minutes, right? Those first couple minutes, yeah. There's something missing.
All I can really say on that is like having absolutely no psychology or ABA, BA background is I did spend the first 15 or 20 minutes of that trying to piece things together. And if you're trying to go for a general audience, I feel like that front end should be stronger to where if you have the people from the outside of the field, I'm not wasting brain power on figuring out the why and the background and have something more condensed like he's saying, where I'm like, these are these people, because like I've gotten background from you over the last 8 years, but there's still a lot of ifs and whys in there that I did piece together, but that was time that I feel like could have been condensed.
There's just like thinking and like creating content and storytelling and like embedded in video sometimes that we're trying to sort out right now, which is how much do you make the audience work for things to keep them interested in going for it? And there's clearly a line in which if you make them work too hard, they're like, fuck this, I'm out of it. So we're trying to figure that out. So if anyone's like...
You just need me to watch it. I always like, why are they doing this? And he's like, shh. And then the next thing they say is like why they're doing it. And I'm always like 2 seconds ahead of what.
What I'm getting at is I don't know where that line is. And we're trying to figure out where that line is through these focus groups.
I can agree with that just because, like, don't spoon feed me. I don't need that. But at the same time, I could have used a little more background, like they were saying about, like, the effectiveness of that structure of ABA and the background on the actual people that were in the video. Just a little kind
of like a general, like, I agree sort of thing. Yeah. Can we just, like, throw hands up real quick to get that? Sure. Okay. Pretty unanimous. Okay.
But that's the thing, like I said, I did figure it out throughout, so you didn't just shit the bed on that.
Yeah, so we
I'm his brother for those who don't know.
Yeah, we purposely left that out, knowing that in the first feedback session to see if we can get some replication on, like, I was fucking lost in those first couple minutes. So, noted, time to change something in the next week before we show it again. Okay. Dig, thanks. No problem, bro. Thanks, bro.
So looking back on this Reno footage was really unique. I've never had an opportunity to bring so many different people from different perspectives, backgrounds, inside the field, outside the field. The majority of people here were actually outside of the field that were listening and giving feedback on this, or they were like newly introduced to the field. One of the gentlemen here was I think an RBT for somewhere around just a couple weeks so far in his first job. And so it's been really unique to check this out. And it's clear that we have a few different things that we need to tighten up, buckle up, so that it is really, really crystal clear what it is that we're trying to get across. And we're not leaving any, loopholes or potholes for people to potentially fall into.
And so you also, I think part of it is also kind of figuring out that Boys Town does multiple different types of services, right? There's the residential piece, and that's really what John speaks to. And a lot of the footage that you see are all footage of people that are residents of Boys Town. And then a kid like Peter is part of a fee-for-service, a counseling service that they also provide. And so I don't know... I think that you can't talk about Boys Town without talking about the family teaching model and the residence program, because that's really what's made it so powerful and so effective. But also the behavioral health center and the types of counseling services that they offer to the community.
Who initially thought like Peter was like one of the residents? Can we like throw some hands up?
I didn't know she was.
Yeah, we fucked some stuff up there. We got to figure that out. Because Peter's not a resident.
He's not a resident.
Yeah.
No. He lives at home with his mom.
Sorry for the lies and clickbait.
Yeah. He's a senior. He attends like Creighton High School, and he's going to college in the fall.
There's in-service, which is like you're living on site versus just
and
like
the residential. Yeah.
Resident, yeah.
But I also think that, Ryan, that I think that a lot of this we can set the stage either through some narration and context that we provide on the front end. I mean, even if we're just like why did we go to Boys Town? Like, why did we pick this location for these reasons? And who are these people that you're going to see in the next hour and the stories that you're going to hear? And we can say we really wanted to highlight what we think are kind of the two, key drivers for what Pat Fryman has been doing, which are, people that come in from the community for fee for service within the behavioral health center, and then the core of Boys Town, which is this residential program based on the family teaching model. And perhaps we just need to add a little more of that, and we can
to kind of close that loop. I guess Peter lives with his mother. Peter lives offsite. He's not a part of the residential program. Sorry, we painted that picture. They do a breadth of services from the on-site that John experienced living there for a couple of years, as opposed to someone that comes in for an hour to 3, 4, 5, I think max-ish a week to receive some help to go back into his normal life and do a little bit better. So we missed that. Yeah.
Real quick, I think part of that confusion is he talked about, I leave this office and I walk over to school. So it makes it seem as though he is living there. That was my assumption, right?
He said he drives the windy road to school. But yes, I understand what you're saying. Not to be super anal, but I know every word.
When you watch this 100 times, you start to remember exact lines. Was there anything in addition to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that that would be a really good idea to include in your introduction is what all the services they do offer are, so that we can kind of parse them out a little bit better. But also, I don't know if you have the ability to interview somebody that's maybe in a family, or a family that's implementing that family model. That would be really cool to see.
There's a couple...
Just to see that, actually pan out.
Yeah.
How that works.
So we haven't thought that out, but there's a couple... there's a couple supplemental shots that we pulled in of, different folks that were in that. So when you saw a lot of the different females that were involved with... around the dinner table and things like that, they were, we could pull that audio and pull that out there. It wasn't something we captured. It was something they provided to us. So, I don't know, we'll think on that.
I just think it would be kind of cool to see how that's actually working. Because if it is a primarily residential treatment center, and then you have these side services, to actually see what they're doing in that family treatment model would be really cool.
Dick. Thank you.
I think, again, though, it just comes back to who you want your audience to. Because you can take Brandon's idea and have this, suicide focus, and it's this suicide awareness. This is what Boys Town does. We can turn it to the money of the general public, that, we just want you guys to know what Boys Town is, and that's where you go into more details about what services they offer. I know you're also trying to film Pat's legacy, so it's do we put the focus more on Pat? I think it really, you need to figure out your goal audience and your message.
Pat, it starts with him.
Yeah,
and that's why we were there. And then secondarily, it's Boys Town as context for Pat, because really those are inextricably linked. He's spent almost his entire professional career at Boys Town. 1991. He was up at UNR for a couple years. Keeps going back to Nebraska because that's how good the steaks are. So
is that why you showed up, Scott? Yeah.
Really good tofu.
This might be a good pivot, yeah.
I kind of think, just because we keep going back to it's obvious the opening maybe needs to just be a little bit more clear about where you're going, and I really think that ultimately you're showing the history of Boys Town. So if you start of kind of that, maybe some of those openers from that old video of Boys Town then and kind of Boys Town now, and then you go into everything about Boys Town, which includes the suicide prevention, everything, the residential model, all of that. It just fits nicely together because all you're doing is telling a story about Boys Town and Pat at the same time.
And I think we
something like that, just to open it up Boys Town and then go from there.
And I think even if we added just Boys Town was founded by Father Flanagan in 1917 with the, primary focus of X. Since then, it's grown into this, and this. And so what we wanted to offer was a better understanding of kind of the comprehensive services that are currently being offered through the lens of one of our favorite behavior analysts, Pat Fryman, something like that. We could
and hear all the things that he's helped to do and continue that model. So
for the folks in the behavior analysis in the room, real quick, which I think is just for you all, myself more so.
Do you see how we've all aligned ourselves? It's just naturally distributed.
So we got speech OT. Did it feel like Pat was canonized out of that as a gut reaction? Like, is Pat the central? Like, are we canonizing him in some sort of way? Just gut reaction, yes or no?
What was the question?
a little bit, but I felt like it was kind of a nice blend.
Are we canonizing Pat?
I didn't.
He's so good
See, I
at
thought there was
projecting
a nice
something
blend.
else that he's hard to do that with.
Yeah.
Because
Pat's just easy to listen to.
We'll talk about the kind of later.
Okay.
You and I.
I think.
Okay.
Do you want to save all my feedback for later?
Yeah, no. Bring your feedback, and if that's part of it, but also we can talk about the canonizing later if you want.
Okay. So I'll go. What I'd like to do in the structure of my feedback is keep it in a specific order, which is that there's a lot to compliment, and I really want to end on that because I like that to be your takeaway. And
also, Scott took like 18 pages of notes, and I saw him the entire time.
He filled up that whole thing.
It was mostly very specific technical things, and so a piece of feedback that I think would be helpful is going back to this narrative structure. What I took away at first was like, okay, this is about Pat. Okay, no, that's not the message. The message here is about Boys Town. No, that's not really the message. The message is about this Father Flanagan figure. Like, no, that's not really. I guess it's suicide. So what you had suggested about how you think you would structure it was exactly what I think solved my confusion in that. So whatever your message is that you want it to be, like, I'm not going to tell you how you would arrange it. Is just figuring out what your hook is going to be. Start with that and build your narrative so that the rest of the shots fill that. And I actually really like that you guys made a directorial decision to not spoon feed anything. And there's just too many gaps for that to work completely. So just a little bit of narration text or something to guide, and some of the things that were mentioned, like there were so many times someone was introduced, I'm like, who's that? Why are they here? The audience he was talking to the whole time, I was just like, who are these random people? Is this like a conference he's at? Is he like...
We know it was a really important talk that he was not going to give up on, but we don't know who he's talking to or why.
Like, it was small, so maybe like at an airport and he's just practicing. I'm like trying to figure out like what was going on with that. So,
which we know, Pat, he actually presents in airports. Fun fact.
To himself.
With his AirPods in or whatever, his earphones in.
Yeah.
Just to feel like uncomfortable in the moment, so that when he gets on stage and he presents, he's used to being uncomfortable.
Right.
So that's the thing that he actually does.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're trying to go for here.
That's why these feedback sessions are so important because, of course, we understand this context because we've been there for 5 days. We know everyone that we're shooting.
Yeah. Sure.
But that's why we need someone with like a totally different perspective to be like, yo, who are these people? It's the psych interns, the behavioral health staff.
Right.
I got that. It's just so interesting to me that like your example of the airport is something that actually happens, but we want to not have come out.
So it was very specific technical things like that where it's just like it was a little unclear sometimes why a certain cut happens to a new section, who was in that shot and why they were there, how that was in service to what the message was. Are we now changing the story?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the thing. From a very technical standpoint, the audio levels jumped and sank a little bit here and there.
I know, and you could hear my audio was soft.
It was mostly just yours. Everything else was pretty.
Well, no, there were times.
Checked those yet.
Okay, there were times where it was like Pat would talk and it was clear and crystal and awesome, and then it would like go to filming a different shot of people talking, and the audio just drops. That 10 decibels. You're like, okay, wait, I need to sit back and I'll lean forward. So I think just leveling those things out, watching for some of the transitions where cuts happen so that conversation like just snapped to a new conversation really fast. And so I was like, it was a little bit jarring when those happened. So
I saw you fill those in a lot.
I tried to timestamp them as best I could. I couldn't see the timestamp, so I just had it on my watch.
He's always a podcaster, right? We work on a podcast together, so that's why the timestamps,
Yeah. And there were a couple. I made some notes about some things that were said that I think just setting the context so that they seem more appropriate than they maybe came across in the moment. There are a couple of things to look for next time that you record something like this. But otherwise, just in terms of like how you arrange the shots, that I thought were things a little just distracting for me as a viewer.
Yeah.
But I'd like to actually end on giving you the feedback of how the things that I think went really, really well.
And this is something where you guys have you curated such good material. This is like a perfect song that's completely out of order, where it's like it's got amazing parts that just don't flow the way you want them to. But honestly, like you've got a fantastic content. The shots are really clear. The visuals are really good. The editing, mostly when you did transition cuts in a single conversation, was fucking gorgeous. Like if that was Jarek or you or whatever happened there, it was like so smooth that it happened. And I just noticed that like. It was the ones where
camera, I saw that.
The slider. Well, but it was even things. It was like he would gesture and you'd cut from one shot to another one of him doing the same gesture, and it was just a seamless, fluid transition. I'm like, that's good directing right there. So nice job on that. And I also thought the length was actually really, really good. I thought you did an exact. The content was right where it needed to be in terms of how long it took, because it didn't feel like it dragged too much, and it didn't feel like it was too short to get the context either. So if you keep it right in the window that it's currently at, I mean, you could probably push it a little bit longer or shrink it down a little bit shorter, it'd be fine. But I thought the length was perfect. So I think you guys did an impressive job generally curating the content that you had. And if you just figure out the story you want to tell and arrange it in that narrative arc so that we can follow the audience, supplement it maybe a little bit with those narration overdubs and whatnot, then I think it will be really, really strong. Because like I said, my big takeaway was, cool, man. You know, and so I like to feel like I'm really clear on what you're selling.
No, cool. Thank you. Super useful. The one thing I realized, because like we watch like the intricacies of like transition and what to drop in where, and like you don't look at it from back and like watch the whole thing together like I was doing tonight. And one thing that I realized was like the I don't know, like there's a lot of little things that I realized even tonight from watching it of like, this seems to be missing there.
Yeah. With in-scene cuts were good. Across-scene cuts, sometimes I wasn't sure where my eyes were supposed to go, you know, and so just paying attention, where's the focus here to the next shot? And like just be mindful of those things. And sometimes they were still really good, but yeah.
And there's probably like, I don't know, half those that I was like, ooh, I think I know what to do here. But there's another half where it's like, I don't know what to do here. And I know that hidden under that layer that you see is really shitty content that we can't cut to.
Sure.
So we got to figure out like what it is that we go to.
Well, sometimes I was thinking about audio and having edited the podcast for as long as I did, that sometimes your best tool is silence or black. And like that can be like, we have some, this isn't going to look pretty, so we're not making you look at it for a second. And then you forget that it's there, you know. And that can be a really powerful tool actually.
Yeah, I think on almost like half of the abrupt transitions would have been fine with just a pause.
Yeah, like
there were a couple of things that felt out of order where I'm like, I'm not sure that I would have cut there.
Yeah.
But the other half, just let people take a breath, because it just seemed to go very quickly.
Yeah,
from one thing to the
next.
next.
Yeah.
I might try a couple fades on some spots and we can see how those fades feel.
Yeah.
If you fade with music, that sometimes helps that transition. You did it later, but early it was just with these quick cuts going from them to the home. You fade that with black or with music, it cleans up some of that.
Yeah, some of it, Jarek and I just like stylistically hate fades. We try to avoid them. So we can also try some of them and perhaps see like if that feels better.
Yeah, you just need a little bit of time.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. What else? We covered yours, yeah?
Yeah, generally good use of music, I'd say, throughout. I actually thought at one point it was like, this is weirdly a beat for Suicide. But then he was actually leading to a really positive message, and it seemed to pick up appropriately at that pace. So I thought that ended up being okay. But mostly I thought the music was you had good choice of music.
Well, I think it's acknowledging that duality, right? And that's what I was talking kind of off camera about to Peter. It's like you're all the things, right? It's like your brother committed suicide and you were 15, and then you just stayed home and you didn't want to do anything, and now you're here, and that is the experience of life is like all of the shit. It's all of the shit, and so ultimately, yeah, I think we want to provide, you know, this hopeful message and this message of honoring, you know, the things that we're doing and honoring Joe's life and honoring, you know, Peter's journey, and I think that Ryan and Jarek did a really nice job on the music selection, because I think that that's really, you know, it's a sensitive thing, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, it wasn't corny, but it was mood appropriate most of the time, I felt. Yeah.
There's a couple times I felt like the audio was off, but
There's a number of spots where we like when we were in the when they were in the tomb.
Yeah.
With Flanagan, we didn't primarily track her audio, and we have that. We just haven't primarily tracked it as like the sole one. So if it sounded like it was hard to hear her, we have the flexibility to do that, or we can also CC it if that's like something closed caption, like put it on screen as the text, if that's something we choose to do. So we've got those flexibilities. Mostly, we just haven't had the time to get to those, and we've been prioritizing more important things like the supplemental shots and stuff.
I mean, to be fairly honest, we fucked up a lot. So,
yeah.
Yeah, like,
for real.
Her audio was definitely unusable for the walking scene. She was wearing something, and we didn't really notice it at the time. It was rubbing off on her.
Those bougie shirts you wear, man. Those
so
furry.
late shout for that. But no, to be honest, it's just one of those things. Like, you know what, we fucked up. There's really no way to fix this other than either put a subtitle on it or.
Yeah, but I also want to publicly acknowledge in front of all of your friends, especially for you, Ryan, that this is an endeavor. This is something unlike anything you've ever attempted, and so for a beta test, it's pretty fucking good.
Oh yeah.
And I think, and again, like this session was so important to us to get this raw feedback from you guys and kind of continue to like, how can we iterate and make this better? But like, hear me say this, like, this is great. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so proud of Jarek, and I'm, and I'm like on the couch sitting next to Kelsey, fucking crying, because also part of this is like we got to live this, you guys, and so it's one thing for you to watch it, but we lived this, and it was just really special, and that's why I'm just like pumped to go to Omaha in 3 weeks, despite the fact that I deeply, deeply, intensely do not want to go to Nebraska in March.
Again, as I said, that trip was canceled. We did not go. All right. Now, one last quick perspective.
What if I can pivot real quick before we wrap up? Is there anything potentially, like, does it feel like it resonate from like the Catholic perspective? Like a little more your way. not to single you out, Greg.
No, I got what they were trying to do from the Catholic perspective. How he wanted to help young boys.
Does any of it feel like it's?
But we don't want this to be a religious piece, and so again, we've had.
I didn't take it as a religious piece either.
Okay, so but it resonates at least. Okay, cool.
It doesn't feel preachy at all.
No. Like, the goal wasn't to make it feel preachy, but the goal was also like just don't feel. I do not want it to feel isolating from any perspective in the helping professions, including the church as well. So,
no.
Okay.
And I think it's hard too because religion has so many like good core human values. So I feel like in a situation where like you're talking about helping people, the church has such a big role in trying to help people. And even though like I'm not very religious, a lot of my values are those of like kindness and helping people. So it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'm not religious, and I felt like Pat got a little preachy in a couple of places, and maybe spread those out over, because I think he said it like here, and the next shot he said something in the next shot. So maybe we could spread those out so it's not all condensed in one area. But I think it's hard in such like a helping profession and like with religion that they're just like go hand in hand with be kind and like help people and live by these good rules.